please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
100 and counting. Yeah, today marks 100 days until the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games in South Korea. Unlike many other games, construction not expected to be an issue with most of the venues already complete. It's already a ski resort, you see. Pyeongchang will also boast the most gold medals in Games history with 102 golds up for grabs, including a brand new sport, air snowboarding? Okay, but despite the hype, ticket sales have been pretty weak. A lot of concern about the increased tensions between North Korea and the U.S. And a lot of people out there still don't know the difference between Pyeongchang and Pyongyang. Yeah, Eric, that's a problem. You got to get it straight there. Get the consonants in order. Eric Gnock Fah is a co-founder and president of Hong Kong Travel startup. It's no longer a startup, actually. We talked to them back in March when they were a startup, and they specialize in destination travel as opposed to getting from point A to point B, which is boring airline stuff. Hey, Eric.
Hi.
Thanks for joining Sherry and me. How are you doing?
Good.
Okay, now Sherry, as a native South Korean, has been a bit of a skeptic on Pyeongchang. I mean, she thinks it's a bad idea. Sorry. She thinks it's a bad idea to upset this quaint little village of 40,000 people with the Winter Olympics and that tickets aren't really selling well. What are you finding?
Well, we don't actually sell the tickets to the Winter Olympics, so we don't have that data. But we are actually seeing healthy growth in pre-bookings during that period. So I think that's giving a good sign. But we definitely see the growth coming from US and Europe more. Asia is a bit weak on that, but I think this Olympic game has been kind of more popular for Western travelers.
So how do you develop your products for Pyeongchang? I mean, let's stay with the Winter Games a little bit because it's a pretty sleepy skiing destination in South Korea, and it's sort of tucked in a very mountainous area. So does that help your job because tourists can't really find the information that they need themselves, or does that make your job a little more difficult?
It actually gives us a little bit more value to the travelers. So because like you're saying, it is kind of like a bit off. It is kind of a new area that's being developed. So getting there has been quite hard. So we've been working with the government there to kind of provide bus or even private charters towards that area to just make the transition there a bit more smooth. At the same time, we're actually developing with the other ski resorts in the vicinity so that after people go to their actual Olympic Games, they can also stay behind to actually do ski or snowboard.
It's actually easier than most people would think. I mean, you think of the name, you think, oh my God, that must be a lot of connecting flights. But all you have to do is hop on San Fran or LAX direct to Incheon, and then it's a train ride away to get there. It's not that difficult.
It's really not that far. So I think the development, they made it quite smooth. Now it's just about really getting that place kind of known. Versus say in Tokyo, then it's all known that it's going to be in the city. While this one, it is a little bit off. Yeah.
Sherry, you've been to Pyeongchang before, right? Do you stay?
Not just ski. Yeah, I did.
You stayed there?
Yeah,
in
I
a bungalow?
stayed there a couple nights, but I was there for Korean beef, not necessarily to ski there, because I don't really do any.
Hey, there you go. You can
so
take in the Olympics.
That's the thing about South Koreans. So I think that can sort of explain my skepticism here. And also, I've been seeing some reports about. I mean, I know you don't do accommodation, but one of the problems that, at least Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games organizers have been having is that many property owners, they're not really used to this concept of international booking sites like booking.com. So I wonder how much of your job with this particular Winter Games is about educating the people who are interested in going or who are not interested in this game at all.
It is true. I mean, I think whether for the upcoming Japan and then upcoming in Korea, the operators there, it's actually for us probably even a bit more worse because we work with very small mom and pop operators as well. So it does take a lot of time to educate them about these online booking sites or even mobile booking. But what's been very helpful is actually Korea Tourism Board gets very involved, as well as say Incheon Tourism and so forth. So they help us to kind of bridge and then kind of really encourage them to get on board. So that has been helpful.
Eric, are you finding a selling point, for those who, for whom it would be a once-in-a-lifetime trip, to make it to Pyeongchang to kind of sell the allure of the Korean Peninsula? Are you doing anything like that? It's like, as long as you're here for the Olympics, you may as well go to the DMZ and see if you can see Pyongyang on a clear day.
Well, actually, that's what we are actually seeing, that DMZ kind of like tour that we also provide.
Really?
The growth is actually faster than we see in other places. So I think because a lot of Western travelers is actually very interested in seeing that part. So we see decent growth on that. Yeah.
Wow, okay. So there is two reasons to visit.
Korean War, so to sort of connect the dots here.
Exactly, and I think that has kind of like really shined on the news recently, so that's been good.
Okay, so after you're done watching the skiing competition, why don't you ski up onto the DMZ and stare at the DPRK fun. Eric, thanks for joining us. Eric Gnock Fah from Klook. Coming up, we are counting down already. We've got new markets about to open, Seoul among them. Speaking of Korea, free trade next.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. We are expecting a fresh new record open for the Kospi this morning after a record close yesterday in the Korean markets. Kospi set to open more than 1% higher based on the pre-trade indicators that we have so far. The blue chips expected to outperform the smaller names at the start, and we are watching the utility sector very closely today with a consortium of Korean companies led by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power and KEPCO expected to bid and take part in Saudi Arabia's first ever nuclear power plant project to build 2 nuclear power plants, according to a Reuters report. Saudi Arabia is said to be considering building nuclear power plants that have a capacity to produce 17.6 gigawatts of energy by 2030 and has sent out a request for information to international suppliers. These reports are coming just about a month after the Korean government met with officials from Saudi Arabia along with KEPCO executives. These two countries have been in bilateral meetings regarding nuclear power and technology cooperation. They have been pushing actively to get into Saudi Arabia within the nuclear energy space. KEPCO is said to be working with Abu Dhabi currently right now, and also with Saudi Arabia regarding consulting them regarding nuclear technology. As of right now, a consortium led by KEPCO is building 4 nuclear reactors for the United Arab Emirates. This contract was signed back in 2009, a $20 billion contract to build 4 nuclear reactors in the UAE. Currently in Korea, KEPCO operates 24 nuclear reactors that generate about 30% of the electricity. But with the President Moon Jae-in pledging to shut down nuclear power plants in a gradual pattern, they are looking for new growth engines outside of Korea. Squawk Box will be right back with the opening numbers for Seoul and Tokyo. Stay with us.
All right, welcome to a new month, November, and the second hour of Squawk. It is 8 a.m., top of the hour on the show. Headlines today. Authorities have identified the driver of a pickup truck that rammed into bicyclists and pedestrians in lower Manhattan, killing 8 and leaving at least 12 injured. Saifulo Saipov is a 29-year-old Uzbek immigrant who went to the United States in the year 2010. U.S. Republicans are delaying the release of their tax reform bill until Thursday, according to NBC sources, because of issues over state and local tax deductibility. And in business news, we're watching Sony today after the Japan tech saying they're expecting a record year. Image sensors are where the action is. Okay, should have an improvement in tone as we begin a new month as we embark on November, and that is the case. 121 up already with the NKY, the Nikkei 225 besting both the Chicago and the Singapore futures market guesstimations. In fact, everything is on the upswing today. Kospi up over 0.5%, and the ASX an hour in about 1/3% up. Let's check shares of Sony this morning. Stock 670.58 after the ADR surged 11% earlier. The tech giants, so they're expecting record full-year operating profits thanks to their semiconductor unit, which includes image sensors, which you need for your smartphones these days. For the year to March, forecasting operating core earnings of $5.56 billion, a new high, quarter higher than the original forecast. Yippee-yi-yay. And Nissan says October sales in the domestic market plunged because of a production shutdown. They did suspend all half-dozen factories domestically after discovering improper vehicle inspections with unregistered, uncertified technicians. New registrations fell about 50% last month, but the company hoping to resume production by Friday. And Panasonic says it could soon up output at their Giga factory. They've got bottleneck problems they claim under control after they reported a 6% increase in second quarter profits thanks to battery demand. You need a lot of those lithium-ion batteries for those EVs. Okay, we've got Matt in Sydney. First of all, let's get to June for a follow-up on the Seoul market on this November 1st. Happy new month, June.
Happy new month, Bernie. In terms of the Korean markets, it is yet another record. I've been saying the word record too many times, but the Kospi is opening at a fresh record. Samsung Electronics at also a new record this morning, and SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics preferred shares also at records this morning. So you're looking at Samsung up more than 2%, its preferred shares up more than 4% after Samsung reported a record third quarter operating profit number yesterday. It gave us some new executive appointments. And also, most importantly, I guess, for the stock price is saying that they will be doubling their investor shareholder payout by next year and that they will keep these levels for the next 3 years. Samsung Electronics has named the new executives to alleviate concerns about a management vacuum at Samsung. Samsung will be maintaining the current 3 co-CEO management structure. The chip business will be headed up by President Kim Gi-nam, Consumer Electronics Division by President Kim Hyun-seok, and the new head of the mobile division will be President Ko Dong-jin. These appointments will be effective immediately, and the background of these new CEOs are actually very in line with what they used to do at Samsung for almost 20 years for some of these people. Kim Gi-nam used to report to Vice Chairman Kwon Oh-hyun, has a very long-standing background in the chip business. Kim Hyun-seok has a strong background in consumer electronics, especially the TV business, and Ko Dong-jin is known for his contributions to Samsung's Galaxy phones, as well as managing the Note 7 crisis that happened last year. Also, one major change that they have in their higher management is a CFO change. Samsung says that President Lee Sang-hoon will be stepping down from the CFO position and also has recommended Lee Sang-hoon to take over Kwon Oh-hyun's position as chairman of the board in March of next year. In terms of the board positions, we are looking at the Vice Chairman Kwon Oh-hyun, Shin Jong-gyun, and also Yoon Boo-geun. These 3 positions will stay. They will stay on as members of the board of Samsung Electronics until March. And also, breaking news right now: the October exports are coming in at 7.1% higher year-on-year. This is lower, missing expectations of 13% higher year-on-year. So that is the latest data that you're getting out of Korea. And also, taking a look at the electricity names, especially the nuclear power-related stocks, we're looking at a lower open for these names. Of course, there is some ongoing weaker sentiment in this area, with President Moon Jae-in's administration pledging to shut down nuclear power plants. So you're looking at the Doosan Heavy Industries and some affiliates of KEPCO a little lower. And we are also getting news that a consortium of Korean companies led by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power and KEPCO will be bidding to take part in Saudi Arabia's first ever nuclear power plant project to build 2 nuclear plants for Saudi Arabia. The executives from KEPCO, as well as Korean ministers of energy, along with Saudi Arabian government officials, have been in bilateral talks over the past month regarding this project. And now we are getting some official reports that a bidding may be coming very soon, and that Saudi Arabia's government has put out a request for information to get suppliers into starting this deal. As of right now, KEPCO does have some ongoing projects in the Middle East, currently building 4 nuclear plants for the UAE. So that is a project and a bidding that we're continuing to watch in Korea. Matt, over to you.
June, thanks very much. The Australian market higher by just shy of about 0.5%. The ASX 200 up by 24 points, 59.34. We've got the All Ords still above that 6,000 level, 6,001. Aussie dollar 76.59. We are, of course, awaiting those China Caixin PMI numbers due out 9:45 a.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. Yesterday, on the back of the official numbers, we saw some weakness creep into the Australian market and the currency. So we'll watch to see if we do see a similar reaction if these numbers disappoint like those numbers did yesterday. CSR, a big decliner we're watching on the Australian market today, off by more than 5%, despite it growing its first half profit of 32%, this is before significant items, to 136.6 million, a 7% lift in revenue over the period, an interim dividend at 13.5 cents a share, but it's flagged issues in the turnaround of its Viridian Glass division and also flagged high costs, including higher energy costs, which have been a feature of company reports here in Australia of late, holding back its aluminium division. The managing director, Rob Sindel, is going to be along to chat to us coming up in Street Science, so we're going to ask him just how dire those higher costs and power bills that he's flagged may be. Another one we're watching today is Oil Search, the stock lower by more than 1%. It's revealed that it's buying oil assets for $400 million in the North Alaskan Slope in cooperation with Halliburton. They're going to team up with that company to get those works done over in Alaska. Very quickly, take a look at the New Zealand market as well. We're watching a big pullback in Kiwi shares today and a spike in the Kiwi dollar. This is the New Zealand jobless rate in the third quarter, came in at a 9-year low of 4.6%. What's interesting here is that, of course, under the new government, they're now going to have, the Reserve Bank is now going to have a dual mandate to focus on employment over at the Reserve Bank. So given that we do have strong employment in New Zealand, could that mean higher rates for New Zealanders, which is one reason why we've got the market pulling back by about 0.8% today. Bernie, back to you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, June and Matt on their respective markets. Repeating a story and updating you, NBC now reporting that the Republican lawmakers will delay releasing their tax bill proposal for the overhaul to Thursday. Seem to be some snags, some issues relating to state and local tax deductibility, which need to be ironed out. Some of the elimination or proposals for elimination of some of these deductibility items is kind of rankling the core, even business interests normally that vote steadfastly GOP. U.S. dollar, meantime, how are we doing there? But U.S. dollar rates, let's start with the yen. Cross at the very top. It's been steady Eddie as she goes on the way down, and then flip the board to treasuries and dwell on the 10-year there. But I could see some movement as we round up to the end of the year and more prospect of resumption of rate increases. It's still a bit early, but let's do the U.S. futures and see what we are doing. Ahead of that, we do have the Fed meeting wrapping up. No change expected this round. Going to be a different story, of course, at the end of the year in December. All eyes on who the president's going to name as the Fed chief. Will it be Powell? Will it be Yellen? Could it be Taylor? Anyway, decision is expected at some point this week. Sri, the pendulum seems to be kind of ticking back and forth. 24 hours ago, everybody was talking about Powell. Now, more people are saying, you know, no press conference scheduled. Maybe it's just as she goes. Yellen.
Well, Powell will be the continuity candidate, and from what I understand and the conversations that I've been having with FX strategists, it is going to be Powell. Mr. Taylor would be perceived as being quite hawkish. He does have quite a hawkish tilt to policy. He's not from the Fed. He's from academia. He doesn't even have a shock horror PhD in economics. So that is seen to be a drawback in terms of his case and his standing and status for Fed chair. I think Powell is going to be the continuity candidate, and that means a continuation of dovish policy. It also means status quo for the US dollar and the Treasury market. But let's get back to taxation and that tax reform bill that's been kicked down the road, albeit for just one day, because I think this is really central to Fed policy and also really central as a result of that to market sentiment. And here's why. If we do get taxation reform, and if it does mean tax cuts, and if it is significant, if it is historic, then that, of course, equates to late cycle economic stimulus, doesn't it? So that will have implications for the Fed. It does risk an inflation overshoot, ergo the Fed will have to move more quickly. At this point in time, there is no shortage of uncertainty associated with the timeline. We still don't have any clarity over how these tax cuts are going to be paid for. And of course, we still have a very, very divided Congress. So a lot of uncertainty on that score. And the Fed are trying to come to terms with this. And you threw up the futures there earlier on in the programme there, Bernie. And it looks as though the markets are quite agnostic about all this uncertainty related to tax reform. And I do believe it is very central. But I think the market's expectations in terms of the politics and in terms of tax reform are very, very low right now. So that's why this sort of delay is hardly surprising. The good news, from what I understand and what I've been hearing, the constant refrain seems to be that the US economy is getting along and ticking on reasonably well. Earnings are pretty reasonable as well. But watch those forward guidance statements and the commentary, Bernie, because from what I understand, there seems to be a relative degree of complacency over all this uncertainty associated with tax reform, as you and I know, is very central to forward planning by the corporates. I'm surprised there isn't more in the forward guidance about the uncertainty related to taxation. But anyway, the markets are taking this in their stride.
Yeah, well, could be an icing on the cake thing if it happens. Say some commentators, the forward PE for the S&P 500 as a goal, if they do go to 20%, would be somewhere around 15.5 or 16%, which puts the valuation of the U.S. market in a whole new ballpark, Sri. Right. So completely different conversation we'll be having if that happens. Okay, thank you, sir. We will go back. Let's go back to our top story this morning for an update. Terror attack in Lower Manhattan. Jay Gray, NBC, returns to us live from New York for the very latest. You know, Jay, Americans have been watching for many months, for over a year, as truck-laden attacks, you know, against innocent pedestrians and, you know, people just going about their daily lives happened across the pond, across the Atlantic in many parts of Europe. And the fact that it has arrived on, you know, America's shores must really send a chill down the spine.
Yeah, Bernie, it really does, and very telling for a lot of people who have been witnessing, as you talk about, these attacks overseas. Look, the police tape just came down here. They've moved in more permanent barricades, a solid indication that this investigation is going to be going on for quite some time, and that Lower Manhattan is going to be locked down for a while. Take a look at the investigation behind me, just a couple of city blocks away here, where they continue to pour over where the attack ended along a bike trail here. We now know that the man accused by police in this attack was an Uzbeki national, 29-year-old Saifullah Saipov, someone who had been here since 2010. At this point, and again, I want to stress, Bernie, it's still very early in the investigation, but no indication from federal officials that he was on any type of watch list, that he had any terror ties, not someone they were looking at. He had a couple of citations, driving citations. He was a truck driver by trade. We know that he took a rented pickup-style truck onto this bike path and targeted anyone he could on a beautiful day here in Manhattan. Ended up killing 8, injuring 11, some of those still in critical condition. He then targeted a school bus. There are several schools in this neighborhood. He hit that, and two adults on that bus, as well as 2 children, were injured. Jumped from the truck with at least a pellet gun, some say a paintball gun as well, yelling Allah Akbar, and was stopped by a foot patrol officer, someone who was here, alerted to the situation and moved in, fired shots. He was wounded. He's in Bellevue Hospital. An update to what we've talked about earlier, Bernie. It now appears that they plan to interview this suspect this evening, that they're preparing to do that right now inside the hospital. They won't Mirandize him. They won't read him as Miranda rights. Instead, they'll use what is a specific rule that they put into play in these type of situations, which allows them to ask questions if they believe there may be other people involved, if there may still be someone out here involved. So that's something, obviously, they're trying to find out. 2 adults on that bus, as well as 2 children, were injured. Jumped from the truck with at least a pellet gun, some say a paintball gun as well, yelling Allah Akbar, and was stopped by a foot patrol officer, someone who was here, alerted to the situation and moved in, fired shots. He was wounded. He's in Bellevue Hospital. An update to what we've talked about earlier, Bernie. It now appears that they plan to interview this suspect this evening, that they're preparing to do that right now inside the hospital. They won't Mirandize him. They won't read him as Miranda rights. Instead, they'll use what is a specific rule that they put into play in these type of situations, which allows them to ask questions if they believe there may be other people involved, if there may still be someone out here involved. So that's something, obviously, they're trying to find out. One of many questions here, Bernie.
Maniacal mashing session for Murata Manufacturing today, plunging after cutting their profit forecast for the full year. Now they say it could be 8% lower than in the previous year. They've been hit by high production costs due to increased output for a phone component. Murata makes a special substrate that makes the iPhone thinner, which is what everybody wants. They used to make really good fax machines, but those went out of style. Maybe a rough day for SJM after the casino operator posted a sharp drop in earnings. Emily is here with more on the company. I thought everything was looking up in Macau. What's wrong with SJM?
Yeah, well, they were the original company, right? They used to have the monopoly, but they still have not gotten their presence, or they haven't opened up a new casino resort on the Cotai Strip, and that's what's hurting them. They're looking like they're going to be the last company to do so. In the earnings report, they said that they're going to be opening up at the end of next year. That would be the Grand Lisboa Palace. As far as Q3 earnings are concerned, it was a miss, down about 16.5%, $54.8 million. Revenue edging higher just so slightly, up 0.6% on year to $1.2 billion. The company is being hit by rising competition, losing market share because of the lack of the presence on the Cotai Strip. And as I mentioned already, they expect to be completed by the end of 2018. And all the construction going on there was impacted negatively by the T10 Typhoon Hato, which swept through Macau in August. SJM Holdings ahead of the earnings release. Shares yesterday closed higher, 0.6%, and later today we'll get numbers out from Galaxy Entertainment as the gaming operators continue to release their earnings. We heard from SJM, we were going to hear from Galaxy, we heard from Wynn and Las Vegas Sands already. Speaking of earnings, we also got numbers out from MediaTek. This is a chip designer traded over in Taiwan, and Q3 net profit down 35% on year to $167.7 million. The company forecasts for the fourth quarter revenues to drop between 7% or a rise of as much as 1% quarter on quarter. Shipments of processors for smartphones remain unchanged at 110 million units, tablets to be 120 million units. Now, speculation is rife that Apple could potentially be introducing MediaTek as one of their Apple suppliers. This is an ongoing lawsuit between Qualcomm and Apple, and we have reports from the Wall Street Journal saying that the next generation iPhone, I'm not talking about the 10, but the one that will come out next year, could introduce some new players into the market. So it could be the likes of Intel and MediaTek benefiting from this. According to the chairman, he says he has no knowledge of this, that Apple will be designing processors based on MediaTek chips. So MediaTek has no comment as of right now.
Yeah, I think they should be banned by law from announcing new iPhones except once every 3 years or so. It gets so tiring, you know?
Yeah, the new one's coming out tomorrow. We haven't even finished talking about that, and we're talking about the next one.
Gee, I haven't even had time to read the specs on the iPhone 8 yet, or the 8 Plus. Hiccup, he said. Okay, anyway. By the way, so SJM 2019, we're years off then, right?
End of next year.
Okay, yeah, you can tell those SJM properties because they look like water lilies. They look like flowers, like Venus flytraps. More on. The reviews are in. Well, some of them anyway. The iPhone 10 getting rave reviews. It was one of the reasons for the stock's gains on Wall Street. Eunice has been spending every spare moment of her life trying to kick the wheels and slam the doors on the new iPhone 10, and I think she's found a new best friend forever.
I don't know about that, Bernie. But you know what? I think I was doing a little bit thinking about the animated emoji, which is one of the new features for the iPhone 10, and which one would best fit your personality. And I think it would be the poop emoji, because you are an essential part of everyone's day. The poop emoji. It's really, really popular. Anyway.
I beg your
poop
pardon.
emoji. Anyway, so these animated emojis are really popular, and one of the new features for the iPhone 10. And I got a chance to play around with the phone and also with some of the new features yesterday when Apple here had an event in Beijing, and they were giving everybody here a sneak peek. The video ended up on the Chinese internet. It was viewed multiple millions of times, and in fact, the term iPhone 10 was read over 400 million times so far. That just gives you a gauge of how much people are interested in this phone. Now, in terms of pre-order numbers, they look relatively promising, I would think. The retailer JD.com has 2.5 million. Chinese appliance sellers have also tallied up about another 3 million altogether. And the most popular color that has been ordered is space gray. On the black market, the markup so far for these phones is almost double the official price. So there are people who have ordered the phone for $2,900 US. And for now, the iPhone 10 is a huge talker because, Bernie, people are saying that they really like not only the animated emojis or the animojis, but they also like the facial recognition as well. And Bernie, I think what's interesting is how people in China don't have the same hang-up about facial recognition as a lot of people do in the West, because you really just look at this phone and suddenly it unlocks because it recognizes your face. And I think in the West, there are more privacy concerns. Here in China, though, because people have given up a lot of their information and feel like it's already out there, especially with the government, they think it's just fine.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? I mean, it's the world, it's Grand Central Station for e-pay. You know, every time you spend money and swipe your phone, it's like, hi, Xi Jinping, why don't you collect more data on me so you know where I've been and what I spend my money on and whether I'm taking my kids' milk money and buying, you know, I don't know, something I shouldn't be with it. Ah, well, since he's got all that on me, why don't I do some more? Yeah, not a problem. But if you put on one of those masks like that, I don't know if it would recognize you because you don't look anything like a Klingon. By the way, what did you call me? A poo-poo emoji?
Well,
should I be flattered?
No, the poop emoji. Do you not know what a poop emoji is? Bernie!
It doesn't
you
look
are
very
showing that you are not
attractive.
techno-savvy.
I just Googled it. No, I'm not. I'm the first one to admit that. What are you talking about? I still dial a rotary phone with the back of a #2 pencil.